Business Bites. Go further and grow stronger with InvestNI. Join local businesses generating billions, exporting to Europe. Check your export readiness with InvestNI's free online export health check. Business Bites with InvestNI.
Hi, welcome to another edition of Business Bites from Bauer Media here in Northern Ireland. My name is David Tye, the Managing Director of Bauer Media, and every week it's my pleasure to delve into the world of business for a great and insightful conversation. Well, this week's guest is Orla McKeating. She's the Business Development Executive at Diversity Mark. So Orla, welcome to Business Bites.
Hi, David. Thank you so much for having me. Delighted to be here.
Well, it's our pleasure to have you, and we're looking forward to a really good chat here. As always, we are limited on time, so we get straight into the discussion. So we'll talk about Diversity Mark in a minute, but I'm just keen to understand your story because everyone's got a little bit of a story. How did you get to Diversity Mark?
So my name is Orla McKeating. I am a white, able-bodied, cisgendered straight woman from Belfast. I grew up in Belfast. I'm one of 7 children. I grew up in the 80s and 90s here. And as soon as I finished my degree in Queen's, I had to get out. I just wanted to leave the place, didn't love it at all. And I ended up in Brussels in Belgium, where I stayed for 10 years and I worked in the commission there, which was fantastic. I thrived in Brussels, actually. What I loved about it is that I had loads of different friends, colleagues from all over the place, loads of different identities, experiences, faiths, beliefs, attitudes. And I just thrived being in that place. I was always curious about different cultures, about different people, and I loved it there. I moved home in 2012 to have my son. And that's where my life, I suppose, threw me a curveball. So I moved home 7 months pregnant and was to become a single mother. So growing up as a Catholic on the island of Ireland, I was kind of fed the narrative that good girls did not become single mothers. So in my head, I kind of failed at everything. I really felt the stigma of single parenting. I kind of grew up in the era of the mother and baby homes where unmarried mothers were sent to these institutions, essentially, where there was lots of abuse, where there was lots of pain and trauma. And so I really struggled with that. What I didn't prepare myself for was having a mixed race child. So my son is Congolese, Belgian, Irish, Northern Irish. So when I had him, the first thing that I noticed was we always read books together and I never saw characters and heroes that looked like him in the books. There was rarely families, single parent families in the books that we read either. So I became quite obsessed on the impact that that would have on him, on us as a family, and on other underrepresented, minoritized, or under-recognized groups. And I had the privilege of doing a TEDx talk in Stormont in 2019. And I spoke about the stigma of single parenting in Northern Ireland and race issues. And I spoke about the lack of representation in books and learning resources. And there were quite a few people got in touch after asking for book lists, which I didn't have. So I thought I am going to start a passion project, and Still I Rise Diversity Storytelling was born. So the end of 2019, we got together in Belfast in person with, I co-founded it with a friend, Anna Leckie. And we just kind of wanted to create trusted spaces where we could gather children, young people and adults around and use storybooks to be more curious about things that weren't typically talked about. So that includes race issues, diverse families, immigration, LGBTQ plus community, neurodiversity. And then when lockdown happened, we moved it online, and that's where it grew into a business. So we offer storytelling, we offer workshops, and we offer training for adults. And it is kind of just creating those trusted spaces. So I was working on Still I Rise, and then a role with Diversity Mark came up just over a year ago. And I'd always been curious about corporate, about workplaces, because they're very much aligned. You know, the work that we do with Diversity Mark is supporting businesses and organizations to be more curious about diversity and inclusion in the workplace and how we can use that ripple effect in the workplace, in our homes, and in society at large.
Right. Okay, well, that's a really fascinating story and I'm sure there's more to it, but we've only got 10 minutes. But we're at Diversity Mark now. So you're working for Diversity Mark. What do you see if someone's watching this as maybe a small business owner, struggling with lots and lots of priorities currently? How does diversity benefit and how does interaction with an organization like Diversity Mark benefit somebody's business, apart from the human aspect, which of course is very, very important? What are the business benefits?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I think we're all kind of in the world we live in now, it can be quite overwhelming. So there's lots going on. We have cancel culture, we have diversity being talked about left, right, and center. Not everyone knows even what the meaning of diversity is. And I suppose in terms of diversity for your business, yes, it's absolutely a human issue. But when we look at the business case for diversity, it really is what we support business in doing is creating spaces where all people can show up as their true, authentic self, where they can feel seen, heard, valued, supported, and where they can thrive. And I suppose whenever people can do that in the workplace, there's more innovation, there's more creativity, there is better retention. So you're saving money. Your workplace has a better reputation as well. There's less inequality in the workplace. There's less employee turnover. And then there is obviously a less outdated culture and fear and ignorance within the workplace. So it is, I suppose, moving towards it. So no one's going to wave a magic wand and suddenly we have these inclusive workplaces, but it is kind of offering that support and guidance and moving towards where we can make our workplaces more accepting.
When you're working with businesses and you're looking at when potential employees are actually interviewing the business, prior to making a choice of whether they would like to work with a business, do you find that diversity is something that, especially the younger generation of workers, are now actively seeking out the credentials for?
Yeah, 100%. So we're kind of seeing whenever people are recruiting, people looking for work now, especially Gen Z, especially the generation coming after Gen Z, they want to see that when they're in the workplace, even if they're not an underrepresented or minoritized group, that their peers are going to feel accepted. And it's really important. We would always kind of advise organizations to amplify the work that you're doing. So if I go onto your website, what are you actually doing? Are you celebrating Pride Month? Can I see photos of your employees? Are they diverse to look at? What are your policies and procedures like? And I think with social media and the comms that you can kind of put out there, it's really important to share what you're doing so that people are going to buy in to your mission and your values as an organization, and that people are going to be included in that space.
Yeah. What about us here in our part of the world? Obviously we have legislation, probably more legislation in place for some of these issues than maybe other parts of this part of the world. How are we doing? Are things getting better here?
So I think we are in a really unique place. And I think if we do this properly, we will avoid mistakes and I suppose situations that places like our neighbours in England and the US are experiencing now in terms of racism, in terms of hate crimes, in terms of really overt inequalities in society. So we're a really small part of the world. We have voted for peace. We want progression. We welcome people that aren't like us. Most people want change. So I think if we can really be curious and actionable and patient with ourselves in moving this forward, I think we can really flourish as a society and as a country. And I think the time really is now. And so it is a case of what is being a good ally look like? How does that show up? And what can we do in our workplaces, in our homes, in our conversations, in our peer groups, and how we learn to do better?
Yeah. So I'm sitting here as a business owner, and I've seen Diversity Marco. I've listened to this interview, and I pick up the phone. it feels to a lot of people quite an overwhelming area to try and deal with, especially if they haven't got somebody in their business to deal with this area. What happens when I pick up the phone to Diversity Mark? How do you handle this massive area of life?
Yeah, exactly. It's a really big deal. It's a huge thing. And so basically the Diversity Mark is an accreditation which is awarded to companies and organizations following an independent assessment process, which ensures that they've reached a high standard of commitment to diversity and inclusion in the workplace. So we start with a conversation. We share what that looks like, and it is a bronze, a silver, and a gold award, and that's all broken into targets. So we work alongside 15 independent assessors who have different levels of skills, expertise, and experience in diversity and inclusion. And we work with organizations through those targets. So we start in the bronze with a gender lens, and that basically looks like organizations just looking at their own internal data. And we support those targets in a really realistic and aspirational way. And it is really moving slowly towards them to try and reach the target. So it is committing to progress. It is committing to a journey. We're not asking that you do everything all at once and suddenly there's going to be this big shift. We ask that you just kind of take the time and work towards, there's 3 targets in the first year. The assessors you're offered peer support and guidance towards them. And then in your second year with the silver, you're adding 2 more wider diversity targets. And then with the gold, the same. So we are a part of the WIB group. We have just celebrated 6 years of Diversity Mark, and we have almost 200 signatory organizations on board. So we meet organizations where they're at. The smallest signatory organization has 3 employees. The biggest one has 30,000. So we're currently supporting over 200,000 employees across the North, the South, and England as well. And what we are seeing is the impact. So because it is a step-by-step process, because you have the support and the guidance, and that can look like picking up the phone or speaking to myself or Emma or my colleague Shruti, or it can be, getting the feedback from our assessment team and kind of reassessing where you're at and how you can have sustainable impact within the workplace, because that's kind of the thing. It's not a tick box exercise. It is really committing to that. So First Derivatives is a fantastic example of an organization where it has literally transformed their workplace. And I quote Fiona McCrilly from First Derivatives. We had a meeting with them last week. And they kind of found that it was a step-by-step process. It was looking at different diversity targets as they went. So they have a menopause policy, they have their LGBTQ plus working group, they have neurodiversity, and it just all has, from being curious and committing and taking the steps to different areas of diversity and inclusion. In the small amount of time that they have had the Diversity Mark accreditation, it has transformed the culture in the workplace. It has transformed how they attract diverse talent. Their retention is great, it's big, and they're just trying to nearly pay that forward as well. So they're hosting open events to kind of share their journey and where they're at.
What it sounds like to me is that basically if someone gives you a call, you can't do the work for a business, but you can certainly give the framework and offer the support to get them from A to B to C, and hopefully all the way through to the, I'm sure the job is never done, but no. It feels like at least if you've got a framework and support and materials to help you deal with things, you're gonna end up with a better place than what you started with.
Yeah, 100%, David. And also it is kind of, most organizations are doing a lot more than they think. So it is kind of offering that space for organizations as well to be really transparent on where they're at. It's no one has completed diversity and inclusion, and no one ever will. We have a society that's ever evolving, that's ever changing, but it is just creating the spaces. And it's so important to have that culture where you can have the conversations. And we do, whenever we are working with targets, it's not a case of setting one and you have to complete it or that's it. It is that journey. Some targets you need to change, you need to edit, situations change, workplaces change, but it is just that commitment to progress there. And, sometimes, we've had instances where people will call us up and something's happened in the workplace and it's quite reactive. So we really focus on being proactive. So literally, you know, it's really easy to just kind of go on our website and, you know, set up a call, or even, I mean, everyone's quite easy to access. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm so passionate about diversity. If it is just having a phone call on, look, wee bit concerned about this, or what if this happens in the future. I think they're called Alpha Generation Alpha. I should know this, but the generation after Gen Z, 40% of those people identify as non-binary. So this is really important for workplaces to be aware of this. So in 10 years' time, what are our workplaces going to look like? Are they going to be accessible for all genders? So little things like that, conversations like that, and how can we make the reasonable adjustments? How can we ask the questions? What support do we have? And we have a huge network at Diversity Mark. And so it is sometimes just signposting in the right direction to the experts that will be able to support and help there. And I always kind of share that there shouldn't be fear, there shouldn't be shame, there shouldn't be guilt. We're all learning. I get it wrong. I've worked in diversity for quite a while now, and I still say the wrong thing. I still do the wrong thing. Not often, obviously, but you know, it's just with that accountability piece as well, and just committing to the journey.
Well, we are out of time, and we could talk about this there's a surprise. And we could be talking about this for another hour, because it's such a fascinating subject and such an important subject as well to talk about. But there's absolutely no doubting your passion and commitment for this area, and it shines through. So all I can say is, Orla McKeating from Diversity Mark and Still I Rise, thank you for all the good work that you're doing, and thank you for being our guest, and thanks for giving us the brilliant insight you have this week.
Thank you so much for having me, David.
Business Bites. Go further and grow stronger with Invest NI. Join local businesses generating billions, exporting to Europe. Check your export readiness with Invest NI's free online export health check. Business Bites with Invest NI.